There is a moment, and perhaps you felt it, when you close your eyes, bow your head, and speak a name you've spoken 1,000 times, and something feels hollow. Not because your faith is weak, not because you're doing it wrong, but because some part of you, deeper than thought, deeper than doctrine, senses that the name on your lips is not the name that was spoken in the upper room, not the name his mother whispered over for him as a child, not the name that made demons tremble and the dead rise, was Yeshua. And the difference isn't just linguistic, it's energetic, it's sacred. And when you understand what was buried in that change, you'll see why institutions went to such extraordinary lengths to conceal it. This isn't about disrespecting anyone's faith. It's about recovering what was lost. By the time we're finished, you won't just know why they changed his name. You'll understand what that original name activates inside you. Let's begin. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what names meant in the world Yeshua was born into. We live in a culture where names are chosen from baby books, influenced by celebrities, or passed down through family tradition. A name today is largely decorative. It identifies you. It differentiates you from the person sitting next to you. But it doesn't define you. It doesn't carry power. It doesn't activate anything. The ancient Hebrew world operated on an entirely different understanding. In the Hebrew tradition, a name was not a label. It was a declaration, a prophecy, a living description of the soul's purpose encoded in sound. When a Hebrew parent named a child, they were not expressing personal preference. They were announcing to the universe what that child had come to do, who that child had come to be, and what divine quality that child carried into the world. This is why, throughout the Hebrew scriptures, name changes mark the most pivotal moments in a person's spiritual journey. Abram, whose name meant exalted father, became Abraham, father of multitudes, at the very moment God expanded his destiny. Jacob, the one who grasps, became Israel, the one who wrestles with God after his transformational encounter at the river Jabbok. The name didn't follow the transformation. The name was the transformation. It announced a new reality before that reality had fully taken shape. So when a child was born in first century Bethlehem, and his parents, devout Jewish people steeped in this tradition, gave him the name Yeshua. They were not simply naming a baby. They were speaking a theological declaration over a life. They were encoding a mission.
Only 3 shekels for the finest
sound.
cinnamon.
I will give
Every
you
time
2.5
someone
for
called
the
him by
pottery.
name in the marketplace,
To
in the
understand the
synagogue,
path forward,
on the hillside,
you must first
they
look
were,
inward,
whether they
beyond the distractions of the material world.
understood it or not, making a theological statement. They were declaring, salvation is here. God is active. Deliverance has arrived. The name was alive. The name was active. The name was doing something every time it was spoken.
The gods
And
favor
then
our expansion.
the world
When does the
changed.
legion depart?
By the early
At
4th
dawn,
century
if the omens are good.
AD, the Roman Empire was under extraordinary pressure. 3 centuries
Deliver
of
us
intermittent
from darkness.
persecution of the followers of Yeshua
Guide us through
had
this
failed to extinguish the movement. If anything, the blood of martyrs had watered the seeds of faith, and the community was spreading. What if the most important message ever delivered to humanity wasn't written in a book? What if it was written in a name? Not hidden behind it, not symbolized by it, but inside it. Encoded in the very letters, the very sounds, the very breath
And here we see the confluence of theory and observation.
required to speak it
The
aloud.
movement described in this passage
This is what the
directly
ancient
correlates to
Hebrew sages understood about the name Yeshua, that it was not simply a designation. It was a diagram, a map of the entire journey of the human soul, from divine origin through earthly transformation to spiritual awakening,
You are safe,
compressed into 4 sacred letters that a mother
sleep now,
could whisper over her sleeping child, that a disciple could breathe in a moment of crisis, that a mystic could meditate on for a lifetime and still find new depth. Those 4 letters are Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin. And what they contain will change how you understand not just his name, but your own existence. Let us open the code together. The first letter is Yud. It's the smallest letter in the entire Hebrew alphabet. If you were to look at it on a page, it would appear as little. More than a suspended mark, a tiny flourish, almost a punctuation of light. You could easily overlook it. And that, the sages teach, is entirely the point. In Kabbalistic tradition, Yud represents the point of origin, the primordial, divine spark from which all of creation emanates. It is the moment. Before the moment. The potential before the manifestation. The silence before the word. The potential before the manifestation. When Yeshua's name begins with Yud, it's telling you something profound. Salvation starts with a spark, a single point of divine light that exists within you, right now, whether you're aware of it or not. It's not something you earn or achieve. It's something you already possess. You just need to ignite it. The second letter is Shin. Picture a 3-pronged flame reaching upward. That's what Shin looks like in Hebrew, and that's exactly what it means. Fire. Not destructive fire, but transformative fire. The eternal flame of the Spirit that purifies, refines, and elevates. Shin is the alchemical furnace. It's where the divine spark from Yud encounters the refining fire of awareness, of practice, of discipline. This is where potential becomes actualized, where the sleeping seed awakens and begins to burn with purpose. The third letter is Vav. It looks like a nail or a hook, and that's precisely its function. Vav means and in Hebrew. It's the connector, the bridge. In the mystical tradition, Vav carries this grammatical function into the cosmic dimension. It is the letter that connects above and below, between the divine and the human, between what is above and what is below. It's the sacred marriage. Point where spirit descends into matter, and matter ascends into spirit. This is critical, because what Yeshua embodied wasn't just divinity. It was divinity made flesh, the infinite compressed into the finite, the eternal stepping into time. Vav is the reminder that you are not just flesh, and you are not just a spirit. You are the meeting point, the living bridge where both worlds converge. The fourth letter is Ayin. It means eye, but not the physical eye you're using right now to watch this. Ayin is the eye of the soul. The eye that sees beyond the surface, beyond the illusion, beyond the veil of separation. It's the awakened perception that recognizes divinity in everything. In the wood you split, in the stone you lift, in the face of every person you meet. Ayin is spiritual sight. It's what the mystics called Gnosis, direct, unmediated knowing, not belief, not faith in someone else's experience, but your own direct perception of truth. Now watch what happens when you put these four letters together. The divine spark Yud passes through the fire of transformation Shin, which connects heaven and earth Vav, opening the eye of spiritual perception, Ayin. The name Yeshua doesn't describe a man. It's describing a process. It's a set of instructions encoded in four letters. Ignite the spark, pass through the fire, bridge the gap, and open your eyes. Before we go
Glad
deeper,
you're here.
I need to ask you something.
I wanted to tell you
If what you just encountered in those four letters felt less like new information and more like something you already knew, that is not coincidence. That is recognition. That is the Ayin beginning to stir. This channel exists for the seekers, the ones who are ready to go deeper. In the winter of 325 AD, bishops from across the known world made their way to a small city on the shore of a lake in what is now northwestern Turkey. Some had traveled for weeks, Some bore the physical scars of the persecution that had ended only 12 years earlier under the Edict of Milan, missing fingers. Branded skin, the permanent marks of an empire that had recently considered their faith a threat to public order. Now that same empire was summoning them to a council. And the man who called the council was not a bishop. He was not a theologian. He was not even, by most historical assessments, a baptized Christian at the time. He was Constantine, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, and the most consequential patron the Christian faith would ever have. What happened at Nicaea is both well documented and deeply contested. The council itself was real. Historians of every persuasion acknowledge its occurrence and its significance. The Nicene Creed that emerged from it remains,
Our Father who art in heaven,
to this day,
hallowed be thy
one of the
name.
most widely
Thy
recited
kingdom
statements
come,
of Christian
thy will be
faith
done,
in
on
the
earth
world.
as it is in heaven.
But beneath the theological conclusions that were formalized at Nicaea lies a layer of history that is less frequently examined and far more revealing about how institutional religion shapes not just doctrine, but the very nature of spiritual experience. To understand Nicaea, you have to understand Constantine's problem. The followers
If we share the
of
grain now, we
Yeshua
risk the
in the
winter
early
storms.
4th century
children
were
are hungry
numerous,
now, brother.
passionate, and
We must trust the earth to
extraordinarily
provide.
diverse. There was no single Christianity. There were Christianities,
I'm comparing the Gaelic
plural
script to
in
the
their
Latin
texts,
Vulgate.
plural in their practices,
And the Elder Futhark runes here mention
plural in their understanding of who Yeshua was and what his life and death and reported resurrection meant for human beings. In Alexandria, communities shaped by Platonic philosophy emphasized the mystical and contemplative dimensions of the faith, the inner transformation, the direct experience of the divine, the tradition of Gnosis that connected the teachings of Yeshua to the ancient wisdom
The light this evening is truly magnificent.
streams of the Eastern Mediterranean world.
We should secure the
In
harvest
Syria,
before the sun
communities
fully sets.
preserved Aramaic traditions that were closer in language and culture to the world Yeshua actually inhabited. Traditions that emphasized the breath prayers, the sacred sound practices, the embodied spirituality of the Hebrew mystical inheritance. In Rome and the Western provinces, communities were developing increasingly hierarchical structures, bishops, presbyters, deacons, that mirrored the administrative organization of the empire itself. These communities disagreed, sometimes sharply, sometimes by the early 4th century, violently. And for Constantine, this diversity was not
The beauty of your creation surrounds us.
a sign of a
We are
living,
grateful for
breathing
this
faith
moment of
finding its
peace.
many expressions.
Let your warmth fill our hearts.
It was a political liability. An empire that needed unity could not afford a religion that fractured along every theological fault line. Nicaea was, at its core, a political solution to a political problem, dressed in the language of theological resolution. The council's most famous debate concerned the nature of Yeshua himself, specifically
You cling to outdated
his relationship
dogma.
to God
This
the
scroll,
Father.
These very words
The Alexandrian
prove that we must
priest
change
Arius
our understanding
argued
of the divine.
that the Son was a created being, subordinate to the Father. Divine, but not co-eternal.
We must hold
Bishop
this line,
Athanasius
or
of
all that we
Alexandria
have
argued
built
the
will
opposite.
surely fall.
That the Son was fully divine, co-equal and co-eternal with the Father.
The Father and the Son are
Constantine,
of the same substance,
who understood
homoousios.
almost nothing
is
of the Greek
Sabellianism.
theological
They are
terminology
merely-
being deployed in these arguments, cared primarily about resolution. He wanted one answer, one creed, one unified position that all bishops could sign and that would end the fracturing. Athanasius prevailed. The Arian position was condemned, and the theological framework that emerged, the full divinity of Christ, co-equal and co-eternal with the Father, became the orthodox position that would define Christianism. Often discussed in the standard telling of Nicaea, the council did not only decide theology, it decided access.
People will grow.
By establishing a hierarchical authority structure, by vesting theological legitimacy in the episcopate, in the organized church, in the councils of bishops, rather than in the direct spiritual experience of individual believers. The council effectively placed an institution between the individual soul and the divine. You did not encounter God directly. You encountered God through the sacraments, through the priesthood, through the authorized texts, through the approved teachings of the approved teachers. The mystical stream. The stream that said the kingdom is within you, that Gnosis is available to every human being who does the inner work. That direct experience of the divine is the birthright of every soul. It was not eliminated overnight, but it was marginalized, pushed to the edges. And the texts that carried it most powerfully were increasingly treated not as complementary voices within a diverse tradition, but as threats to the unity that the empire required. Most were lost. And then, in the winter of 1945, in the cliffs above a bend in the Nile River near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging for fertilizer in the soft soil at the base of a cliff when his mattock struck something hard. He had found a sealed ceramic jar, approximately a meter tall, buried in the earth. What he found inside that jar, and the 11 other jars discovered nearby, was one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century. 52 texts written in Coptic, preserved in leather-bound volumes, buried sometime in the late 4th century, almost certainly by monks from a nearby monastery who were hiding them from authorities who had ordered such texts destroyed. They had been waiting in the desert for 1,600 years. They had been waiting. Among the Nag Hammadi texts, none has attracted more scholarly attention or generated more theological conversation than the Gospel of Thomas.
Chapter 4, verse 7.
It is not a narrative
The light
gospel.
reveals the
It
path.
contains no
The
birth
darkness
story,
conceals
no
the
miracles,
truth.
no passion narrative, no resurrection account. It is a collection of 114 sayings, logia, attributed to Yeshua, introduced simply with the words, "These are the secret sayings which the living Jesus spoke." And the sayings themselves are startling in their directness.
Which the living Jesus spoke.
Where the canonical Gospels often present Yeshua's teachings wrapped in parable and narrative context, the Gospel of Thomas strips away the wrapping and presents the core with an almost uncomfortable immediacy. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Salvation in this framework is not something received from outside. It is something brought forth from within. An interior process of recognition and actualization, not an external transaction administered by an institution. The kingdom is not coming. It is already here. The problem is not absence, but blindness, the failure of Ayin, the unopened eye, the perception that cannot recognize what is directly in front of it, because it has been trained to look elsewhere. 16 centuries later, you are reading these words. The texts that were buried are available. The tradition that was marginalized has been recovered. The code that was encoded in the name Yeshua, and that these buried texts illuminate from a dozen different angles, is no longer hidden. But knowing about a buried tradition is not the same as walking it. Reading about the mystical stream is not the same as entering the water. The Nag Hammadi texts were not buried so that scholars could debate them in academic journals.
These words my
They were
entire
buried
life.
so that you,
But what I
This moment right now,
when you
this is just
were
for
ready,
you.
could receive what they contain.
I want you to know something.
And what they contain, at their core, is an invitation. The same invitation that was encoded in 4 Hebrew letters. The same invitation that Yeshua extended to every human being who came within earshot of the one who spoke it.
Listen closely to what I am saying.
The invitation
This moment
to not
is an
merely
invitation
believe
to
in the
something
divine,
greater, an
but to
opportunity
become
for all of us.
what he demonstrated was possible. The code, written in 4 Hebrew letters. The map encoded in a name that a mother whispered over her child in 1st century Bethlehem. The process that was suppressed by empires and buried in deserts and obscured by centuries of institutional religion, but that survived intact in the human body itself, which has never forgotten what it was designed to do. It was there before you were born. It will be there after every empire has turned to dust. And it is there right now, waiting, as it has always been waiting, for the eye to open. Come, enter the fire, cross the bridge, open your eyes. What if the most sophisticated spiritual technology ever devised was not housed in temples or cathedrals, but inside the human body itself? What if the ancient mystery schools, the Essenes, the Therapeuti, the Egyptian Hermetic traditions, had preserved a precise understanding of what the human body is capable of, not merely in the physical sense, but in its capacity to serve as a vehicle for spiritual awakening. In the ancient world, this was not a fringe idea. It was the central
Our traditions
insight of
forbid
every
this
major
alliance.
wisdom tradition that
But the
preceded
scrolls speak
Christianity.
of a time when all paths merged. That time.
The yogic traditions mapped chakras along the spine. The Taoist traditions mapped the meridian pathways through which life force flowed. The Kabbalistic tradition mapped the tree of life with its 10 sephirot as a diagram of the divine energies flowing through both cosmos and the human soul. All of these traditions pointed in the same direction. The human body is not an obstacle to spiritual development. The body is the laboratory. It is the instrument, the vehicle, the sacred vessel through which the divine spark navigates its return journey to the source. Yeshua didn't just teach this as an idea. According to the oldest strata of the gospel tradition, the layers that scholars date closest to the historical Yeshua, he embodied what he taught. He lived it in his physical form. His 33 years of earthly life were not incidental. The sages of the mystery schools taught that the number 33 corresponds to the number of vertebrae in the human spinal column, the central channel of the human nervous system. The axis mundi, the world axis of the microcosmic human being. In the ancient understanding, the cerebrospinal fluid, the clear, sacred liquid that bathes the brain and spinal cord, was considered by these traditions to be nothing less than the physical vehicle of the divine spark, the Yud, navigating the human architecture toward awakening. The mystery school teaching held that the cerebrospinal fluid undergoes
a monthly refinement cycle, gathering vital energy at the base of the spine and ascending, in direct relationship with the lunar cycle, to eventually reach the brain and the pineal gland, where it would trigger what the ancients described as illumination, the opening of the third eye, the awakening of Ayin, the perception that sees through the surface of things into their essential nature. This is why the Yeshua tradition consistently used the imagery of light, not as metaphor, but as precise physiological description of what happens when this process reaches completion. I am the light of the world. That statement was not theological poetry. It was a report. A precise description of a physiological spiritual state that was understood in every major mystery school tradition that touched the Eastern Mediterranean world. But here is where the teaching becomes personal. Because this process is not something that happened 2,000 years ago in Galilee.
These words.
This process is happening right now inside your body. The cerebrospinal
spinal fluid is moving right now through the channel of your spinal column. The pineal gland, that pine cone-shaped structure at the center of your brain, is sitting in darkness right now, waiting. As it has always been waiting for enough sacred substance to reach it and activate it. The ancient Coptic word for this substance is Christos. Not a title, not a surname, but the name for the sacred secretion that the body produces, that when refined enough and raised high enough through the sacred channel of the spine, anoints the brain and activates the doorway of perception, producing what the sages across traditions called enlightenment, the light. The I am the light of the world, experienced as an interior illumination, not an external event. And what Yeshua demonstrated in the account of the Transfiguration, in the healing accounts, in the resurrection itself, was not a supernatural exception to the natural order. It was a demonstration of what the natural order is capable of when it is fully realized. Not miracle. Fulfillment. And what he demonstrated, the mystery schools taught,
I offer you this
is the
wisdom,
birthright of every
freely
human
given.
body, not just
It
the
is
exceptional,
time for you to
not
carry the light forward.
the ordained, not the theologically trained. Everybody carries the sacred channel. Every spine is a potential axis mundi. Every pineal gland is a potential site of illumination. Every human heart carries the fire of Shin, the purifying, elevating, transformative fire that has been given to you as a gift, not as a punishment. The spine is not a structure that traps you. It is the altar upon which the divine fire does its work. The breath is not merely respiration. It is the bellows of the sacred forge. Every time you breathe with intention, you are feeding the sacred fire. Every time you sit in stillness, you are creating the conditions. Every time you fast with intention, you are reducing the noise that obscures the signal. Every time you study these ancient maps, the 4 Hebrew letters, the Kabbalistic diagrams, the Hermetic body maps, you are doing more than accumulating information. You are orienting the Ayin. You are aligning the Vav. You are preparing the channel for the Yud to pass through the Shin and reach the Ayin. You are, whether you know it or not, already walking the path that the name Yeshua describes. Before we move to the final chapter, I want to pause here. If what you have just encountered, the sacred science of the body,
This
the
wisdom
spine as
passed
axis
down
mundi,
through
the
generations
Christos
is now
as sacred
yours.
secretion,
Accept this sacred sign.
resonated with something you already knew in your body before your mind had words for it, then share this with someone. Not because a channel needs views,
but because someone in your life is carrying this
most profound.
question
I realized tonight.
right now, and they don't know that an answer exists. Share this video with them. That single act of sharing might be the Vav, the bridge that brings someone across the threshold from belief into knowing. That single act could change their relationship with everything. Let's go to the final chapter. There, everything comes together. There is a Greek word that does not translate well into English. The word is pistis, and the word is gnosis. Two different relationships with the same territory. Both words were used in the early Christian
He cannot be trusted with the legions in
communities
Gaul.
to describe one's
We must
relationship
move
to the
now,
divine.
Before Caesar returns.
Both were considered valid, but they were considered to occupy different rungs on the same ladder of understanding. Pistis was the foundation. The trust, the orientation, the commitment to a path before you that must be planted before the tree can grow. Without pistis, without trust, without orientation, the soul wanders without direction. And the energy of the Shin has nothing to work with. But pistis alone is not the destination. The Christian mystical tradition, and indeed the tradition of Yeshua himself, always pointed beyond belief toward direct experience.
Not yet the
The
end.
Sermon on the Mount, when read not as moral instruction but as mystical cartography, is a precise map of interior states. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. The pure heart is not a morally perfect heart. It is a heart cleared of the noise of ego, of fear, of accumulated defense. A heart refined by the fire of Shin into a clear vessel through which the divine light can pass unimpeded. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. The peacemaker is not a conflict resolution specialist. The peacemaker is the one who has so thoroughly aligned the above and the below, the Yud and the Ayin, the divine spark and the awakened perception, that peace becomes their natural emanation, not their forced performance. The Beatitudes, the parables, the Lord's Prayer, all are maps of the interior journey. Our Father, who art in heaven. In the Aramaic original, Abun de Bashmaya does not mean a transcendent deity living somewhere in the sky. It means, O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of light and vibration with your divine breath. This is not religion. This is resonance. This is not doctrine. This is direct experience. And the difference between the two is everything.
Close your eyes.
Gnosis,
Focus on the
in the
distinction.
tradition that Yeshua
Let
himself
the confusion
represented,
dissolve
was
into
the
understanding.
fulfillment
Difference
of
is
pistis,
everything.
not its replacement. The journey begins with trust. It deepens through practice, and it arrives when it arrives. not as belief, but as a direct, unmediated recognition of what you already are. You are the Yud, the divine spark. You are the Shin, the transformative fire that is burning in your belly right now. You are the Vav, the sacred bridge between your human experience and your divine origin. And you are the Ayin, the eye that is, right now, opening, whether you know it or not, to the reality that has always been present, waiting for you to turn and look. The name Yeshua is not finished speaking. It speaks right now. Every time someone calls that name with understanding of what it contains, every time the Yud is ignited, the Shin is fed, the Vav is aligned, and the Ayin is opened. What happens in that moment is not merely personal. It is cosmic. It is one more point of divine light rejoining the field from which it was never truly separated. One more cell of the divine body remembering itself. One more awakened eye beginning to see what has always been visible to those who look. We began this journey with a feeling, a hollow feeling when saying a name that felt incomplete, a name that felt like it had lost something in translation. We have now traveled together through the linguistic history of a name. We have walked the four chambers of the sacred code, the divine spark, the transformative fire, the sacred bridge, and the opened eye. We have recovered the buried wisdom, and we have stood, even for a moment, in the presence of a teaching so vast, so precise, so alive, that 16 centuries of burial could not extinguish it. If this journey has moved you, if something inside you has stirred, recognized, or remembered, please consider subscribing to this channel. Not because we need the number, but because this work exists for the seekers, and seekers need to find each other. If you know someone else who is carrying the same hunger that this journey has spoken to,
I'm so glad you
share
arrived
this with
safely.
them. That is the Vav in action. Leave us a comment below. What stirred in you? What do you now understand about the name that you didn't before? Your response becomes part of the living tradition that this teaching belongs to. The next video will go deeper into the mystery of the Christos and the sacred science of the body.
To our present needs.
Exactly.
Until then,
the core remains, but
breathe
the expression
with
changes
intention.
with us.
Sit in stillness. Study the maps. Trust the Yud. Enter the Shin. Walk the Vav. Open the Ayin. The name has always been a door. You have always had the key. Yeshua.
Yeshua.
Ah.
Yeshua.